What's up guys, and welcome back to my channel. My name is Priscilla. I am a Nigerian women's wear designer based in London. It feels like it's been a minute since I actually came and introduced a video before going ahead into the tutorial. But in this video, I'm going to be showing you guys how to make this pencil skirt with an asymmetric front. I'm actually going away on holiday soon, so most of the pieces I'll be making over the next few weeks will be sort of summer holiday appropriate clothing. So if you guys like to see how to make this skirt, keep on watching. I'm going to be starting out with the pattern tutorial and then move on to the sewing tutorial. If both of them don't fit in one video, if it becomes way too long, I think I might have to split them in two, because I just like to be able to show you guys the entire process of creating a garment. So if you like to see how to make the skirt, keep on watching. If you are new on the channel and aren't subscribed, it has come to my attention that 70% of you guys that come and watch are not subscribed. Like, I like to see returning faces, familiar names as well. So make sure to click that red button that is usually here or here. You cannot miss it when you see it. It's red, it's very attractive and very obvious. Give this video a thumbs up if you like to see more pattern and sewing tutorials. And without further ado, let's jump straight into this video. I'll be needing the following tools and materials to make this skirt. So I've laid them out here. The first thing I really need are pattern papers, and these are different types I'm going to be utilizing in this video. I got myself my pattern master set square, the two types of scissors I need, my marker, tape, as well as my skirt patterns, which I'm going to be linking down below if you haven't seen them already. And the material I'm going to be using is this denim fabric, which I got when I went to Woolcrest Textile. I think I paid about £4 a meter and I got a total of 3 meters, but I don't think I'll need more than a meter for this skirt design. So once I have everything ready, I am good to go. The skirt design is really basic. I wanted it to be simple to make and straightforward. The front is asymmetric. It's a pencil silhouette. There's no waistband. The hem is raw and it has 4 buttons in the front. So I'm just going to go ahead and plan my front panel. I have grabbed a sheet of pattern paper and I folded it in half so I can create a full front panel, so I can go ahead and really draw the shape of the asymmetricness that I want. So once I'm done laying down my front panel along the edge of the folded pattern paper, I'm just going in to trace off the front of the basic skirt pattern. So I'm tracing out my waistline, my dart, as well as marking where my hip line is, because that's sort of where I'm going to be shaping in the skirts from to create that pencil silhouette that I'm going for. So I'm just going in here to refine my lines, connect my dash lines using my pattern master and a marker pen so you can clearly see what I'm doing. And because this pattern already has a seam allowance added to it, I don't need to add seam allowance once I've sort of created the draft from this plan. So I'm just going in here to draw in my hip line, as well as change the shape of the skirt a little bit. So I want the skirt a little bit longer and I went for 16 centimeters in length. As for the hem fit, I marked 25 here, which means the total sort of fit around my knee area is 100 centimeters, which is 25 times 4. So once that is done, I'm just connecting the hip line to the new hem, as well as drawing a fresh hemline to mark the bottom of the skirt. So I'm just going to turn this to the other side and replicate what I did on the first side on this reverse side, so we can have a full front panel for the front of the skirt. Contrary to what I would normally do, I normally cut like a half pattern if it's the same on the left and on the right hand side. But because we're going to be having a left side that is different from the right side, I want to plan the shape first on this draft, as you can see here. So now that I have my full front panel, my 2 dots, my center front, my hip line and hemline in place, I'm going to go in and plan the shape of my front opening. So you can just have a simple opening down the center front, but I wanted something a bit quirky and unique, and I've decided to do this sort of like slanted opening on the side. So it slants in this direction like this. So the first line I'm drawing here starts about 2 to 4 centimeters from the dot on your right, and then the second one here starts from the bottom all the way to about 7 centimeters below the hip line. You want to ensure that it's below the hip line so the skirt doesn't open and reveal your thighs when you wear it over time. So once I'm satisfied with that line, I'm going to end up with 2 panels, A and B, as you can see here. So I'm just going in to plan my facing because I don't want to have a raw edge along that opening of the skirt. And I just use the size of this ruler as a guide. It's about 4 centimeters wide. You can make yours wider if you want, but I just thought having it narrow would be easier to work with. So I would need a facing for part A and another one for part B. But what I realized here is if you just do it like this, when you're done sewing that skirt, there would be no overlapping in the front to cover up that opening that we have on this side of the skirt. So I went ahead and I extended the side that I've marked out in green by 4 centimeters before planning a facing from that side. So I'll just explain a bit more. As of now, I've gone ahead and I've traced off panel A and panel B onto fresh pattern paper because they're going to be 2 separate panels on the front of the skirt. So that is the big panel on the right, on the left hand side, and the smaller panel on the right hand side. And the one on the right hand side is the one that we would need to extend. The one for the left, you just need to plan a normal facing that you will sew to that edge. But this one right here, you would need to extend so that big one can wrap around the small one and covers up a little bit of the top of your leg when you wear the skirt. Except you are creating another design, you would have to extend this side in order for that sort of wrapping over to happen. So once I've planned that ahead, I would need to create a facing. Just ignore that folding. I think I was doing something else, but I later changed my mind. But we'll be creating the facing for the panel on the right. So in here, I'm just creating the facing for panel on the left. I'm just tracing around the edge before going in to draw my 4 centimeter wide facing, connects the hem, as well as writing any sort of information I need and how many pieces I need to cut, draw in my grain line, as well as add a notch around the hip. So I'm going ahead to add a 2 centimeter hem allowance because I'm going to be distressing the hem of the skirt. So once that is done, I'm just going in here to write in info on panel 1 and panel 2, which is the one on the left and the one on the right hand side, as you can see here. So I don't really get confused when it's time to actually cut the pieces out. So once that is done, the one thing I forgot to do was to actually create the facing for the smaller panel on the right here. I later on cut out the piece in the tutorial, but I did not actually create a facing pattern, but I created a facing pattern for this piece on the left hand side here, but I did not create for the right. So please create for the right side when you're doing yours, because I don't know why I forgot to do mine. But once that is done, we're done with the front panels and it's time to move ahead to create the back panel. So the back of the skirt is very simple, very straightforward, and what I'm just going to do is I'm going to take a piece of pattern paper and trace off this side of the front plan that we created earlier on. So it's just simple. It's one straight line on the center back, which will be a fold because we just want one piece for the back of the skirt. I'm just going in to draw my hip line, indicating that that line on the center back is supposed to be cut in a fold, so I don't have a seam on the center back of the skirt. I'm also going in to draw my back dart, and I've extended it by 1 centimeter compared to the one in the front. So I'm just connecting the points together, drawing in my tiny triangle, drawing in my side seam, my hip line, as well as any other points that I need as well. So I also went ahead and I added a grain line and wrote down any extra information I need, and I don't need to add a seam allowance because remember the original pattern we traced from already had seam allowance included in it. So I've gone ahead and I've cut out my back panel. As you can see here, it's very simple, really straightforward, because all of the party happens in the front of this skirt design. So with that done, the pattern pieces are complete. Like I said, the only piece I forgot to cut out was the facing for the smaller side of the front, but I ended up cutting out the piece later on in the video, but I don't have a pattern. So we have the back and the front pieces as well. So I'm just going to go ahead and pin down my pattern pieces on my fabric. I'm working with this beautiful blue denim material, and I've pinned down the facing on the wrong side. So you would need to do this for facings that work in asymmetric sort of garments. Remember my jumpsuit tutorial, I did something like this. I had to pin the facing on the reverse side before cutting it out, because if you pin it on the same side as the main piece, what you will have is a facing that is in the wrong direction of the fabric. So just remember to cut your facing on the reverse side when you're dealing with asymmetric pieces or asymmetric sides of garments. So I'm just going in here to add my notches around my dart, around my hips, and around my hem, so I know where they are when it's actually time for me to sew these pieces together. So these are all of my pieces cut out and laid down flat. I have my back piece, which is just one full back of the skirt. I also have my pieces for the front, the big panel as you can see here. I also have my facing for that panel as well, and because we cut the facing on the reverse side, it actually matches to that seam of that panel. So for the other side of the front, I've gone ahead and I've cut it on the reverse side because I wanted a contrast to exist between the bigger side of the front to the smaller side of the front. So I've also gone ahead and I've cut out the facing like I mentioned, and I think this facing is 1 centimeter wider than the other one. This is why you should have pattern, people. This is why I should have pattern. So I've gone ahead and I've cut out a piece on the reverse side so it matches the seam of that side of the front. So the next thing I'm going to be working on is the dart, and I'm just going in here to mark the dart on the wrong side of the skirt panel. So because this one we decided to work with the lighter blue side, the dark blue side is going to be the wrong side of the skirt. So I've marked it, transferred it with my pen, marked it with chalk, and I'm just going ahead to mark the other dart on the other side of the front as well, marking it with chalk, adding some pins to just hold it in place before going ahead to stitch the darts together on my domestic machine. So I'm just going ahead to repeat the same process for the back of the skirt. The back has 2 darts, and I'm going to transfer the dart from the pattern to the fabric using a pin, mark that with a chalk, and then just pin it together before going ahead to sew using a normal straight stitch on my domestic machine. Some of you have actually mentioned that I should not do the reverse stitch but instead tie a knot. But sewing is like cooking. There are so many recipes to do the same thing, and this is just how I do mine, so you can use whatever works for you. So next up, I'm just going to go in to pin my facing onto my panel. So this is panel 1, and I've pinned my facing along that front seam, and I'm going to repeat the same thing for the other panel, pinning the facing along that edge of the front, and I'm going to sew them together so we have a nice finished seam in both panels of the front of the skirt. So once I've added enough pins, I'm going to take these panels to my sewing machine, and I'm going to sew on a 1 centimeter seam allowance from the beginning all the way to the end. And one extra thing that I did after sort of sewing the facing on together to the panel of the front is I went back again and I stitched a 0.3 centimeter edge stitch that holds the seam allowance to the facing. So what this will do is it will force the facing to sit inside of the skirt, so you have a nice finished front on the outside of the skirt. So this is the first panel. You can see here I have stitched it together, I've done the edge stitch, and I've done a zigzag stitch on the outside of the facing to just make it nice, clean, and properly finished. I repeated the same thing on the other side, so it just looks really beautiful even on inside of the skirt. So now that my front panels are done, we can actually overlap because of that sort of extension that we made on this light blue side. So once I'm satisfied with that, I'm just going to go ahead and pin my back panel to the sides of this front panel so we can actually have a full skirt that would wrap around my body. So I'm just going to go ahead and use some pins and connect the side seams of the front to the side seams of the back. Once that is done, I'm going to go ahead and sew together my side seam using a normal stitch on a 1 centimeter seam allowance, and after that just clean up my edges with a zigzag stitch so the inside of the skirt looks nice and professionally finished. So I'm going to repeat that on the left and on the right hand side, and I just quickly put the skirt on just to check if it fits right. I think all the workout I've been doing is finally paying off, because the skirt was a bit loose around the waist and around the hips, and I had to go ahead and stitch an extra 1 centimeter around sort of the waist and the hip of the skirt so it actually sits nicer on my body. So one thing I have to say is, if you're going to do this skirt design, I suggest you work with denim that is a little bit stretchy, so you can go ahead and really do a really nicely snugly fit skirt design, and you don't have any extra lumps and bumps around sort of the fit of the skirt, because this denim wasn't very stretchy, so I couldn't make it very fitted because then it would be difficult to move. So I had to sort of settle for a semi-fitted silhouette for the pencil skirt. So once I was done taking out the extra 1 cm from the side of the skirt, I went ahead and I marked my buttons, and my first button starts 1.5 centimeter below the waistline, and they are separated by 10 centimeters. So once I marked it on the dark blue side, I went ahead and I transferred the dots to the light blue side, because I actually want to put press studs on this skirt. I don't just want to have normal buttonholes and buttons. I sort of want to have that nice press studs here. So as for the hem of the skirt, I just went ahead and I distressed them using my unpicker. This actually took a while, so if you're going to distress your skirts, just have coffee, watch a movie, do something while you do this, because it's actually time consuming, because you have to pick out all of these horizontal threads to release the vertical blue threads that you can see here. And I just think this is a really nice trendy way to finish off hems and waistline of garments if you don't just want to do waistbands or you don't want to seam your hems. So the next day I went on to a place called DM Buttons. It's around Soho, not too far from Tottenham Court Road, and this place caters to all your buttonhole needs, all your embroidery needs, and this was the place I used to go to when I was in uni, and the service there is fairly reasonably priced. I think everything I did cost about £5, and the man is relatively friendly. At least if you go there in the morning, he's friendly in the morning. And I was the first customer that day. I just went there, told him what I wanted, and I settled for silver press studs. So you have to mark the buttonholes before you go there, because he doesn't do that for you, and he has several machines in the room and does a very wide variety of sort of buttonhole variations. So with the press studs done, the skirt is finished. I am so pleased with the outcome. I love how relaxed of a fit it has. It's not like super tight, so it's something that I don't even have to sort of think about too much when I'm wearing, and would look really nice paired with a play suit, with a pair of heels or a pair of flats during holiday. And I like the fact that you can open up the buttons a bit more if you want to show more leg. But so far I love the skirt, and I hope you guys enjoyed watching this tutorial. If you did, please give it a thumbs up. I'd love to know all of your thoughts, suggestions and ideas down below. And until my next video, have a good morning, afternoon and evening wherever you are. Bye.